had a dream recently, and I thought it might be sort of a prophetic dream, so I did share it here on my YouTube channel. I'll put a link up to it to the top. What's interesting, kind of a backstory on that, is that I don't really watch much news. So I am, of course, like I'm not living under a rock, so I am aware that coronavirus is active. But at the same time, I didn't know a whole bunch of particulars. I just kind of, the only information I've heard is from people that have kind of told me a little bit of some, like somebody said, oh, have you heard about it or this or that, and just kind of pieces of information from friends and people that I'm in contact with. But as a general rule, I try to stay away from the news just because it seems to be, in my opinion, overhyped, sensationalized, not always a true story, and almost in a way I look at it as what they want us to believe. So, and by they I mean just the powers, the powers in control want to kind of spoon feed us our information. So, not to mention it's also a depressing thing for me to watch. I try not to spend too much time getting involved in those situations because I have enough going on in my life with helping people and just the struggles of life, and I'm aware of that stuff, but I'm more concerned about working in my immediate area, trying to keep everything cool there. So I don't. The reason I'm saying that is I don't have a bunch of information about that. So it was interesting when I had the dream and I shared it, how a lot of people went immediately to coronavirus or famine. I'm not sure if it's something prophetic, but as far as I've, kind of from what I have prayed on and tried to work through in my mind, I do see it to be related to some kind of a food shortage just because of that. But this video isn't so much about my dream or interpretations of it as much as just kind of the coronavirus in general. I wanted to make a video on that just because I've had some thoughts springing out from as a result of having this dream and kind of thinking about it, and comments and a few things that have happened here in California. Things are a bit different for sure. It's not as visibly evident as maybe some other parts of the world, I'm sure, even across America. But as far as we do have, the other day, a state of emergency was declared in Los Angeles County, which I'm just outside of, as well as the whole state of California. I know that's going on in this area, so I'm aware of that. And I went to the store the other day, and the hand sanitizers were cleared out, as well as supplies of water and stuff. Where I drink distilled water, so going and trying to get my distilled water recently has been a real chore based on, I believe, what seems to be the worry about coronavirus. And it's actually started before the coronavirus was mainstream. There was still lower, like people had an early heads up, I think. So definitely some noticeable, smaller changes where had I not been aware of the coronavirus, I might not have made that big of a deal about it, noticing these things. But you can definitely tell, even kind of without much information, that something is up. Another thing that I noticed the other day was, Thursday evening, just this last Thursday, I usually go to my class, and it's at the Thursday evening. I usually go to my church class where I take a class, and I didn't go not because of coronavirus, but because my friend had a birthday, so I stayed with him and hung out with him that evening and kind of. But I was curious if a lot of people showed up because there's been, from what I've heard, concerns about Uber drivers. I take an Uber out there, and just people gathering in general. So what happened just recently, Sunday, was we had church as normal, and like Friday, I guess it was Friday, I believe, before that, my church actually sent out a letter which went into what they're doing to prevent coronavirus, some safety measures that are in place. And I think it might have really freaked a lot of people out. I read the letter, and it was scary in a way just to read. And they talked about, with communion, we do communion at my church, and it'll be a 2-cup system where you'll have your juice in 1 cup, and then below that the wafer, instead of digging your hand, which I never much liked anyway since I'm a germaphobe. And just some other changes they've made with no hugs, that kind of thing, just trying to be safe. And I think their attempt was to try to make other people feel safe as well. But at the same time, I think it might have the opposite effect, in that it put out, wow, if the church is afraid, maybe I should be afraid. And I kept wondering where, as Christians, should we be afraid? Shouldn't we just trust in God that if it's our time type thing? I know we need to have precautions, but at the same time, if we're going to worship God at church, like that would be the one place I think he would say you're free and clear if you're going to be free and clear. And then later in the letter, they did mention that, it's important to remember that God didn't give us a spirit of fear, and they attached some verses to back that up biblically. But I was very curious to see how church attendance was going to be, and this weekend, of course, was daylight savings time, so I was curious on that. I didn't think about that so much, but when I went in, I even commented to my friends, like, wow, we're like half full at this church. It's a church that sits, I believe, about 3,000 people. And it was about half full, it looked like, just from where I sit. And sometimes that happens during worship music and people file in later, but it was still half full. And our pastor commented that he thought it was, that even the morning I went to 11 o'clock, but the 9 o'clock service was dead as well. And he commented that he thought it was from daylight savings time, but I'm not so sure. That letter might be a little, scary to people. And it started to get me thinking about the impact on the economy overall. I don't know if this stuff's been talked about on the news. Like I said, I don't watch news much, but I see a huge impact coming on the economy because, food, obviously water and food supplies and survival food and sanitizers is all going up. That's awesome. Like all that stuff's going up, and anybody that's a stockholder might have wanted to put that information out, as well as toilet paper, and be like, yeah, stock up, because it's getting paid dividends right now. But as far as other things, like for example, my church, like I know there's a worry that that they're dependent on churchgoers coming and tithing as the support for that. And if attendance is down, that's less tithes and et cetera, et cetera. So on a broader aspect of the economy overall, where people are going to less movie theaters, where people are going to less places where people gather in general, that's going to have a big impact. And, food might be up a little bit, or water or toilet paper, but we can only use that so much. That's something that we're going to save. And even though there might be a spike in the beginning, it's obviously going to come and normalize out again, because people can't go through more food or more toilet paper because of this. They just might be stocking up. So the economy, and I was thinking of planes and commercial travel, all of that I'm sure would be down. I did hear from my mom that they quarantined some people on a cruise ship because somebody was sick with coronavirus. So yeah, I think that anything like any kind of air travel would be out right now, any kind of, sea travel, any of those things where you're around a bunch of people. But just on a broader spectrum, all the different things that are related to that we normally do where we're around a bunch of people, that people are kind of putting off at this point with fears. And as, time progresses, where this isn't remedied, where it hasn't died down, we're in March currently, and I know that a lot of times, like with the swine flu, we got to that peak in the winter, and then all of a sudden it kind of died down over the summer, and then eventually I believe it fizzled out when the southern hemisphere went through after they went through their winter as well. So maybe something like that will happen if we're in March now, as it starts to become warm again. Until that point, until we reach that decline again, where people start to feel safe, there's going to be economic problems. And on a political scale, I don't want to speak about political sides or that kind of stuff. I don't want to get into that kind of discussion, but I do see that this could be very detrimental to Donald Trump's campaign, because as somebody that has, I guess their platform has been that they've done well with the economy, like this could be huge for, there's a media that's a left side that runs stuff about the impeachment and stuff, and there's a president and different things that are detrimental to Donald Trump in general. And there's the president that's saying my claim to fame pretty much is how well I've done with the economy. To watch what's happening with this fear, and to watch how it's pushing people, it's going to affect the economy. That's the bottom line. And this fear feels very sensationalized to me, very hyped up. And my understanding from just a little bit I do know about it, because I did watch a short little video on what it is exactly, but it sounds like there's a scary part that it has a 28-day incubation period, but at the same time, it sounds like the flu. It sounds like it's mainly dangerous to people that have, are elderly or immune compromised. So I don't know how many of us fall into that situation where we're at a huge risk. We might get sick with it. And I've even thought that I was sick somewhat recently, and I even thought maybe that was a strain of it or something, related to that I might have had earlier this winter. I don't think there's much of a fear, and it's certainly, I don't think it warrants the overreaction we've been having to how panicked people are that this could happen. Now, I may be totally wrong. I'm not speaking from a position of I've gone to med school, or that I even, a virologist or anything like that, where I even or even a basic common person that understands these things. But I've just seen so many things be hyped up before and have never come to fruition. And then to think that this just sounds like, the flu kills so many people every year, and it's generally those people that will be most affected by this flu, this virus. So I feel like it's really been hyped up a little bit too much, and that the only thing it's really going to have is more political and economical, repercussions instead of actually being something that's gonna kill us off. As far as my dream, I did look up some dream analogy type things where there was like, what certain words mean for certain things. And bug, actually, if you see a bug in your dream, it's supposed to mean sickness, which I thought was really interesting, being that so many people had made a comment about coronavirus, because if you remember my dream, it was bugs crawling towards a piece of like half-eaten bread, and I couldn't feed everybody. And then, of course, food has to do, I believe, with health as well. So both of those having to do with health, and then we're in what some are saying could be a pestilence, and I'm thinking a famine. I don't know how that would play out, but economically, if it did get worse to where people, I don't know. I don't know how that plays out, and I don't know that that was exactly a vision or just a fluke dream, and then the weird text message right after that I had kind of prophesized that would be about. So interesting to think about, but I'm not so sure, and I'm not sure how that dream plays out, but I just feel that coronavirus, our faith needs to be in God ultimately, in Jesus, and he could heal lepers, he could do all kinds of things, so, and he's healed me, so whatever happens, I'm okay with. I'm not going to change my life in any way. I wouldn't do something stupid, perhaps, which would be hang out in a quarantine area with them. But at the same time, changing my lifestyle and living any differently right now, I'm not going to do, and I don't see any reason to do that right now. So that's just some thoughts I wanted to share. May be of interest, may not, but I thought I would share that anyways. If you're not already a Patreon, I would like to encourage you to be. I'm getting ready to start creating exclusive content for just my Patreons, and that way I can give back through these this exclusive content to those people that are actually supporting this. And still the channel will be going for, as long as I can, but for those that are helping support the channel, I want to give them something that's just for them. And I also want to give them, anybody that's like a Patreon, I want to be able to give them my email address, my private email address. A lot of times I get people asking questions on this channel, and unfortunately I can't check in every day. And sometimes it could be even 3, 4, 5, 6 days before I'm able to check in. I know some of these questions are time sensitive and different things, but with life and different challenges I have going on, it's not always easy to go through a list of comments and respond to everybody. So people that do become a patron will also receive my private email, where they can write me anytime, and I'll give them a quick response. They get priority, and I'll write back within 24 hours. So I want anybody to consider becoming a Patreon that hasn't already. You can do so anonymously. If you wouldn't like me to place your name up here with these other names, that's fine. Just go ahead and let me know in the message when you make the donation, and I will keep your name hidden from the public. But I do just appreciate it. I do want to give back to those. I want to start offering other things as I come up with them that I can offer to Patreons, to just say thank you so much for helping support this ministry. You can also contribute through GoFundMe below. That's much appreciated. If you haven't already subscribed, please do so. I make videos every Wednesday on God. I make them on Kratom. I make them on supplements. I make them on all kinds of stuff. So if you haven't already subscribed, please do so. And of course, likes are always appreciated. Comments are always appreciated. All that good stuff helps me get a better rating on this channel. So that's it. Just my little rant, guys. Until next time, God bless.